Today we start with a discussion on the status of the Kerala economy, how it is doing currently, what are the immediate challenges, and what is the scope for the economic growth of Kerala given its financial constraints. In order to have an idea about the macro indicators, we shall just have a look at some of the figures which will help us understand the status of the economy in some depth. So we shall have a look at some of the macro indicators. The state has an area of 38,863 square kilometers. This might seem to be a dry number, but it has significance because the density of population in the state is one of the highest in India. And why is this density an important figure? I shall tell you shortly. But the population density is 860 per square kilometer, which means that there are 860 people subsisting on an area, if you can imagine, of 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer square. This has to be seen or read against the national average of about 480, and we have to also remember that there are certain countries in the world which are very large and which have very small populations, and those countries like Canada or Australia have density of population less than 10. This is a factor which limits the economic potential of the state, because you cannot have large industries anymore in the state given the density of population which we have. Let's now look at the state domestic product, which is the sum total of the economic activity taking place in the state. We have drawn these figures from the Planning Board's economic survey, the State Planning Board's economic survey, and the budget presented in the Kerala Assembly for 2023-24. As of 2022, the state's domestic product, the GSDP, was 9,06,000 crore, which went up to 10,17,000 crore in 2023, and the estimated state domestic product for 2024 is 11,32,000 crore. If you look at the composition of the contribution of the various sectors, the agriculture sector, the secondary sector, and the tertiary or the services sector, we can see that 9% is the contribution of the primary agriculture and allied activities, 27% comes from the secondary or the industrial sector, manufacturing, construction, and the services contribute 64% as of now. The state can pride itself on the fact that it has, as is widely known, rankings which can be the envy of any other state in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals Index, which is based on a UN matrix. It is number 1 in India in terms of the SDG index, composed or compiled by the Niti Aayog, and also as per the multi-dimensional poverty index, which is an indicator of the level of poverty. The state has the least amount of poverty in the whole of India. So the state which has the least level of poverty, the least number of poor people, is also Kerala, and this completes the macroeconomic indicators which is necessary for a discussion of the Kerala economy. Now take a look at the employment figures which are also material to this discussion. The total employment in the organized sector in the state is 12.5 lakh. The public sector has 5.6 lakh people on its rolls, including those in the government. The private sector, under the formally registered employees, the figure is 6.9 lakh. But we should remember that one of the problems that we face is unemployment among the youth, among the educated, and that is indicated by this huge number which we see, that where in a state where 12.5 lakh are employed in the organized sector, the number of people registered on the employment exchanges is 28.4 lakh. Let's also have a look at the Kerala budget figures. The state's annual budget as at the end of 2023-24 is estimated to be of the size of 1,76,000 crore. The total of the expenditure that the government anticipates to spend during 23-24 is 1,76,000 crore, of which it is to be noted that the expenditure on salaries to government employees, a large figure, is 40,000 crore. Pensions being given to government staff is 28,000 crore, and the interest burden on borrowings which the state holds comes to 26,000 crore. So this is an indicator. These figures are important because it indicates the stress on the finances of the state government caused by what is called committed expenditure, which cannot be avoided, which the government has to necessarily spend, and which puts pressure on the funds that are available for capital investment, infrastructure development, and other developmental activities. The fiscal deficit, as estimated at the end of March 2024, as per the budget, is 40,000 crore. That is the net borrowing, more or less, that the government will have to do during the current year. The total extent of public debt of the state is estimated to be 4,08,164 crore, which is 36% of the state domestic product. And this is a key number because as per the Finance Commission recommendations and as per estimates of experts, it is assumed that the ideal debt level for a state is 30% of the state domestic product, and Kerala's current debt is about 36 or 37%, which means that the ability to borrow is limited by the economic output or the denominator, which is the state domestic product, and therefore there is concern about public debt, whereas the state's finances also indicate that it is not able to spend because it is not generating enough income, and it is not able to spend on infrastructure, on development, on other essential factors needed for continued economic growth because it is constrained by this debt overhang. Also, in this context, we should remember that the state faces slowing remittances from outside of India. There are lakhs of Keralites who are working outside India. But one of the recent features which ought to be remembered is that Kerala is losing its status as the leading recipient of remittances to other states. Maharashtra has overtaken Kerala as the top recipient of internal remittances from NRIs. And in terms of the geographies which are sending money into India, it is to be noticed, or it is to be noted, that the US has overtaken West Asia as the geography which is sending the largest amount of remittances into India. Now take up the next issue of fiscal federalism, because that's an important aspect. We discussed the lack of finances that the state faces in terms of ability to spend on development. Related to this is the criticism from those in government in Kerala that the state is hemmed in by constraints or curbs put by the Finance Commission recommendations, and that the state is unable to grow because enough of transfers are not taking place from the center's tax collection in terms of the devolution which is passed on to the states. The 15th Finance Commission recommendations, which are applicable for the current period of 2021 to 26, had suggested that there should be a vertical devolution to the extent of 41%, as distinct from 42%, which was the recommendation of the 14th Finance Commission. And after this vertical devolution, the horizontal devolution has to be done on the basis of a matrix in which the maximum weightage is given to a factor called income distance. The weightage to income distance under this matrix, constructed or recommended by the 15th Finance Commission, is 45%, and this 45% is based on the distance of the per capita income of a state vis-a-vis the per capita income, vis-a-vis the state having the highest per capita income. So that is a component which has a weightage of 45%. Kerala, which has got a relatively higher per capita income, gets lower marks under this particular factor, and it has got a higher weightage of 45%. The other indicators which are used for the horizontal devolution are area 15%, population 15%, demographic performance, for which the indicator takes into account the fertility rate of the population. It has got a weightage of 12.5%. Kerala gains here. Ecology is the extent of forest cover in relation to the total state area, where the weightage is 10%, and the state's own tax efforts or fiscal consolidation or fiscal efforts has been given a weightage of 2.5%. Under this 15th Finance Commission recommendation, there was also a recommendation to transfer 2.9 lakh crore to all the states, not all the states, to 16 states, out of which the highest share was for Kerala of 53,137 crore among 16 states which were to receive this 2.9 lakh crores of revenue deficit grant as recommended by the 15th Finance Commission. The highest share has come for Kerala among the 15 recipient states. But Kerala's share in the horizontal devolution overall is currently at 1.92%, and during 2004-05, about 15 years ago, the share of this horizontal devolution was in excess of 3%. So that is one of the major criticism against the fiscal distribution of the taxes from the center to the states, that Kerala's share has been progressively coming down, that from a share of 3%, the state is receiving now only 1.92%, and therefore the ability to spend of the state is correspondingly constrained. We also have to look at the GST impact in this scenario, because GST was introduced in 2016-17, and the impact was supposed to be beneficial for consumer states. In particular, Kerala is seen as a consumer state where the benefit of GST was supposed to flow largely on account of the fact that GST is a destination tax. It is a tax levied at the point of consumption, whether it is a service or a good, and therefore as a consumption state, it was assumed that the implementation of the GST will be beneficial to Kerala, even though under the GST regime, the states were surrendering their taxation powers to a centralized structure on the basis of a consensus tax is uniformly levied across India on a category of goods and services. Therefore, the surrendering of the ability to tax goods and services individually by the states, it was assumed that consuming states would gain. But when we look at the figures of GST collections accruing to various states, we find that the GST collection, increase of GST collection for Kerala has not matched expectations. For instance, if you look at the figures for April to November of 2023, we are in January 2024, and the latest available figures are for April to November. And among the southern states, if you look at the increase in the GST accrual compared to the previous year, while the other 4 states have achieved higher increases in the GST accrual during this period, Kerala's rate of increase has only been 5%. Andhra Pradesh has had an increase of 12%, Telangana 9%, about 10%, both Telangana and Tamil Nadu, Karnataka 13%. Kerala's rate of increase of GST collection has only been 5%. To my mind, it can indicate only 2 things. One is economic activity inside the state has not reached the levels that we assume it has reached. Economic activity is lagging compared to our perception or compared to other states. That can be one reason for the lower GST collection. The other can only be that tax collection needs, efficiency of tax collection in Kerala needs to go up. Only these 2 can be the reasons for a lower rate of increase of GST collections in Kerala. The other issues which are relevant for a discussion on the Kerala economy at this point of time are whether this welfare model or the Kerala model, which has been commented upon by the likes of even Amartya Sen, wherein social security pensions are given on a large scale, poverty has been contained and curtailed, as we saw the state with the lowest level of poverty in the whole of India. Social indicators at a high level in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals Index, the state with the number 1 rank. But is this model sustainable is a key question, because there are financial constraints. If you look at the social welfare pension, where the government gives 1,600 rupees per month, one of the highest among all the states in India, the number of beneficiaries as per the government figures is about 53 lakh. But it has to be noticed that a CAG report submitted to the Assembly had reported that 20% of the beneficiaries under the social welfare pension scheme are indeed ineligible. So, which would imply that there is leakage of transfer of money from the government to the extent of 20%. And we should also remember that the total amount of pensions which are distributed during a month is about 900 crore. So this would imply that between 175 to 200 crores of pensions are, as per the estimates of the CAG, going to people who are ineligible. So there is definitely a case under this welfare model for a targeted distribution of subsidy, for a need to weed out the ineligible persons and to make subsidy available only through direct benefit transfer using the Aadhaar method, so that people in government service, people who have income levels beyond the scheme's parameters, do not get this subsidy. The second is related to our the state's attempt to attract investment to promote growth. According to the Ease of Doing Business Index, Kerala was ranked 28th among all the states in the country in 2019. there are only 28 states. So the state was at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of this index. But hearteningly, it has improved its position in 2020, which is the last survey available. But even then, the rank is only 15. We all know among a group of 28, unless a state is within the top 5, it will not be reckoned for purposes of investment. And this is something which the state government has to actively look at if it is keen on economic growth, pushing up the state's economic activity and the state domestic product. The state also, one of the features which we have to remember, not necessarily a negative feature, but then it has an impact on the economic growth strategies, that the state has the highest minimum wages across India, with a minimum wage for a general category worker, not a skilled worker. For any worker who doesn't have any specific skills, the highest minimum wages in the country as of now is in Kerala at about 14,000. And for comparison purposes, not necessarily the state with the lowest minimum wages, Madhya Pradesh has got minimum wages as per the statute of 9,000 rupees. There are also two issues which are related to the growth discussion as far as Kerala is concerned. One is the perception about trade unionism, the perception about the organized labor's attitude to new industry coming up. And this is something of a battle of perception which ought to be waged and won. In terms of the number of mandates, maybe the state is not worse off the mark in relation to other states which are competing for investment, but it is necessarily to be acknowledged that the perception is that the state has got a culture which creates obstacles for investment, which is why we have had instances of companies, of entrepreneurs, of businesses trying to shift investments or move investments from Kerala to outside of Kerala. This perception battle is something which ought to be waged frontally and won. And the negative demonstration effect of stories of trade unionism, putting obstacles in the way of investment, that has to be undone before anything else can be done towards promotion of economic growth, investment and development of the state. And given the density of population which we discussed in the beginning, we have to conclude that the growth drivers for the Kerala economy going forward can come only from areas like IT, not very land intensive, human resources intensive, the IT sector, including the startups, the artificial intelligence and other new frontier areas of IT. Tourism is a major sector which can attract investment and also contribute towards the growth of the economy. And health and higher education, where already decent standards have been achieved, there is scope for improving the output or the outcome from these two sectors. If you can improve the quality of healthcare, attract people who are visiting various centers in search of better medical care at reasonable cost, including people from abroad. And also there is tremendous scope for improving the quality of higher education, retaining people, students who are looking out for higher education opportunities and currently going outside of the state, as also attract people from outside the state towards the higher education sector in Kerala by assuring higher standards, quality education, and also peaceful campuses in our journey forward.
Amrita IAS Academy.